The mutiny in Russia also put a question mark on the future of the Wagner group. What will happen to their fighters and their chief? He's said to have gone to Belarus. What about his troops? Vladimir Putin has given Wagner soldiers three options. They can either join the Russian military or return to their families or take refuge in Belarus. So the Wagner group is far from being dead. In fact, reports say they're seeing a flurry of new joinings, and some of them come from unexpected quarters. Youngsters from all the way from Nepal seem to be joining this group in Russia. Videos of young men from the Gorkha regiment training with modern weapons are doing the rounds on social media. They're said to be joining the Wagner group on contract. The question is, what has prompted the shift? Our next report explores. These are supposedly youngsters from Nepal, showing off their guns for TikTok videos, sharing a laugh with their colleagues and training intently to get battle ready. But which battle are they preparing for? The one being fought in Ukraine. These young men want to join Russia's Wagner group. Reports say Moscow is seeing a flurry of applications. And among those applying are youngsters from Nepal's Gorkha regiments. That's right, the famed Gorkha regiments. Known for their bravery, these youngsters are joining hands with Wagner. You may ask why. And the short answer is, for better opportunities. Think of the Wagner group like a corporate company. They're looking to expand their operations and need manpower for it. In return, they offer good salaries and even advertise to recruit. Look at this ad, for example. It was posted on Twitter. It invites people to join the Wagner group. And it's offering this: an honest salary of 240,000 rubles. That's about 2,700 euros, plus health and life insurance, as well as good bonuses for results. Now, for many of these youngsters and retirees, 2,700 euros is no small amount. Also, they get to fight the war with modern weapons. So many are said to have signed contracts like these to join the Wagner group. Last month, President Putin also signed a decree. It offers Russian citizenship to those who sign up for 1 year of military service for Moscow. This is said to have opened the floodgates for Nepali youths. Other requirements like language have also been eased. Now, Nepal has long been a source of fighters for foreign armies. Nepali youths were part of the British Army as far back as the 1800s. They were called the British Gorkhas. After India's independence, they became a key part of the Indian Army. But recently, this relationship has been tested. Last year, the Government of India announced a new recruitment scheme. It's called Agnipath, or the Path of Fire. It offers 4 years of trainee service in the army and promises to retain only a quarter of these soldiers permanently, which means the remaining soldiers will have to return to civilian life. Nepal does not like the new scheme. It has protested. Last year, it paused the hiring for Indian Army's Gorkha regiment in Nepal. New Delhi tried to reassure Kathmandu.
We have been recruiting Gorkha soldiers, to the Indian Army for a long time, and we look forward to continuing to recruit Gorkha soldiers to the Indian Army under the Agnipath scheme.
But the promises have not worked. So Nepal's youth is looking for alternatives, and in Russia's Wagner group, they see a compelling option. But remember, this is not an army. Its operations have been controversial and its future uncertain. Tonight we begin with China. The big headline is their economy. It is under pressure. Growth is slowing down. Exports, manufacturing, property, retail, all key sectors are underperforming in China. And what is the Chinese state doing? It is blaming the West for all of it. Listen to this.
As you know, some in the West are hyping up the so-called cutting reliance and de-risking. These two concepts, to a certain extent, are a false proposition.
De-risking is a false proposition, he says. Li Qiang is attacking the West. He's the Chinese premier. And he says the West is pushing the agenda of decoupling. That's the plan to move away from Chinese factories, the plan to develop alternative supply chains. The world is working on it, and of course, Beijing doesn't like it. Li was speaking to international investors, and it sounded like a desperate attempt to win them back. But this is just the facade. Behind the scenes, China is pressing the panic button. Emergency interventions have been ordered. Crackdowns have begun. As the numbers paint a dismal picture, China is trying to take control of the narrative. Let me show you the latest. There was a sell-off today. China state banks sold their dollars. They sold US dollars and bought more of the Chinese currency, the yuan. You can call it a currency swap of sorts. How does it help? Quick background. The Chinese currency has been weakening against the greenback, the US dollar. Its value fell by 4% in 2 months. So an intervention was necessary, first to arrest the fall and then to spur demand for the yuan. And that's the reason why Chinese banks have intervened. They exchanged their dollars for the yuan. China's central bank has also pitched in. It injected more funds into the market. All in all, Beijing has gone on the offensive. It is aggressively defending the yuan and its own economic policies. Plus, it has launched a crackdown. Influential financial experts are being muzzled in China. People like Wu Xiaobo. He's a very prominent expert on finance. He writes for a famous Chinese news website. And he's published many best-selling books as well. Now, this man is being muzzled. Yesterday, he was banned from Weibo. Weibo is China's version of Twitter. Wu had almost 5 million followers on this platform. And now he's been banned, and his recent posts have been deleted. Now, we cannot pinpoint on the exact trigger for the ban, but we can tell you that Wu's suspension is part of a bigger crackdown. Recently, a top data provider was also suppressed. I'm talking about a platform called the Wind Information Company. What did they do? They published data on Chinese markets. Investors outside China relied on this platform to make their bets. But suddenly, Beijing has cut off access, so overseas clients could not get data from this company. The clients began looking for alternatives. They turned to experts like Wu for insights on the Chinese economy. They wanted to understand what's going on in China. And now Beijing is going after these experts too. This is a clear signal. China wants to control the messaging. It does not want any bad news to go out. But it may be too late for this, because leading experts the world over have already made up their minds. Yesterday, we told you about the S&P report. S&P is a global ratings agency, and it has slashed China's growth forecast from 5.5% to 5.2%. Other Wall Street banks are also pessimistic, like Goldman Sachs. They've downgraded China. Earlier, the estimated growth was 6%. Now the forecast is 5.4%, according to Goldman Sachs. And what does this bank say about China's economy? It says the economy looked strong after reopening, but the recovery has now, quote-unquote, fizzled out. Calls for a stimulus are intensifying in China. Experts say Beijing should pump money into the economy to revive it. And these are not just outside experts. These are also people who work for the Chinese state. People like Ning Jize. He's a senior official and a member of a top political advisory authority. Let me quote from what he said. It is better to introduce measures sooner rather than later. The question is Beijing listening? So far, there are no signs of a stimulus, only talks and crackdowns. The Communist Party is trying to mask its failures, but the writing is on the wall. The era of high-performing growth in China is coming to an end, and Beijing's current policies will only slow it down further. Meanwhile, the Russian rebellion is very much in news. Its fallout is still being assessed. What happened was dramatic and unprecedented. Wagner fighters were barely 200 kilometers from Moscow. They were coming for Putin's seat of power. A few more hours, and they would have reached Moscow. So why did Putin not try to stop them? Why did he not dial the Wagner chief himself? Questions like these were doing the rounds over the past 2 days. Late last night, the Russian president decided to address them, and he sounded almost defiant. He said he let the mutiny go on to avoid bloodshed.
Поэтому с самого начала событий
From the very beginning of the events, that is the Wagner mutiny, on my direct order, steps were taken to avoid a big bloodshed. This took time, including to give those who made a mistake a chance to think again, to understand that their actions are strongly rejected by society, and to what tragic, destructive consequences for Russia, for our state, the adventure in which they were dragged leads.
последствиям для России, для нашего государства.
So that's Putin's side of the story. The man who intervened finally was the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. And he says that Russia mismanaged tensions with Wagner. It's a rare comment from the Belarusian leader. What he means is that Putin did not deal with it on time. Now, the rebellion was playing out in Russia, but the whole world was tracking it. Both Putin's enemies and friends were watching the drama as it unfolded. None more than Chinese President Xi Jinping. After all, he shares what he calls a no-limits friendship with the Russian leader. But there's more to it. Xi Jinping has his own selfish reasons. You see, China has long looked at its northern neighbor as an example. They have a shared past, and of course, their common love for communism. The fall of the Soviet Union rattled Beijing. They scrambled to cement their own leadership. They focused on the economy, the Chinese. They focused on the economy, and they clamped down on dissent even harder to avoid a chaotic implosion, the kind that the Soviet Union saw. China did not want to meet the fate of the Soviet Union. Then came the war in Ukraine. Russia launched the so-called military operation in February last year. It expected an immediate victory. But 16 months later, Kiev still stands, and the Chinese found a lesson again. They realized that invasions are uncertain and risky. So if Xi Jinping wants to invade Taiwan tomorrow, he would have to think twice. He may know how the invasion will begin, but he can't be sure how it will end. And if a win is not immediate, it leads to uncertainty. It leads to a standing conflict. The kind of conflict that could shake a leader's hold on power. It's happening with Vladimir Putin. It may also happen with Xi Jinping. So Beijing will try to learn from Moscow's mistakes. And pictures like these would have shaken them. People in Russia were seen cheering the Wagner rebels as they took over a city. Take a look at this. The short rebellion exposed the cracks in Putin's regime. And this may have been shocking for the Chinese leader because just like Putin, he too has done everything to consolidate power. The Communist Party's biggest nightmare, in fact, is a mutiny. So back in the day, they rolled tanks against their own people in Tiananmen Square. China, in fact, spends more money on internal security than its army to take on the world. Chinese leaders are paranoid when it comes to popular protests. And the scenes in Russia would have given them the chills. Also, like I said, some lessons. So what can China learn from the Russian mutiny? To be wary of a parallel power center. You see, Russia let Wagner grow. It nurtured Prigozhin into a feared leader. It allowed Wagner to become a dominant force. And private armies are often a slippery slope. They can do your bidding, but at some point they can also challenge your leadership. So that's lesson number one for China, no private armies. As of today, they don't have any. There is absolute state control. Which brings us to lesson number two. Who do you trust? Prigozhin was Putin's close aide, his so-called chef, part of his inner circle. But he betrayed that trust. How will Xi see this? Well, he's already paranoid. He came to power in the year 2012, and since then he's eliminated political rivals, actual and perceived. It has been an endless purge of high-ranking officials and junior party workers in China, both tigers and flies, as they're called in Beijing. Everyone got the boot in the name of an anti-corruption campaign. More than 100 military commanders were fired. In 2022, there were murmurs of a divide, a crack in the Chinese leadership, and Xi Jinping dealt with that swiftly. He kept shuffling the top leadership so that no one but him remains constant. Which brings us to the third and the last lesson. Both Xi and Putin are strongman leaders. They don't care about democracy. All they care about is their image and power. When Putin was challenged, his image took a hit, and Xi Jinping wants to avoid any such scenario, so expect a stronger control on the press. China, in fact, is already dealing with a host of troubles. The economy, as we told you, is slowing down. Growth is not where it should be. Investors are leaving the country. The last thing they need is a mutiny. So it looks like Prigozhin may have done Taiwan a favor. He has showed Xi Jinping the risk of an invasion. So China is struggling, and the larger business environment is not helping. It's tough to operate in. Business leaders across the world are tightening their belts. This year began with mass layoffs. We are halfway through it, and the layoffs are not ending. Earlier, it was the technology players. Now, banks and advisory firms have joined the layoff wave. Goldman Sachs is firing its top officials. It will ask 125 managing directors to leave, 125 MDs. This is across departments, offices, and countries. So, why is Goldman Sachs firing senior talent? Because they're unable to generate new business. Reports say the company has faced a deal slump, so 125 managing directors have been asked to go. What's the overall situation like? Well, bad, to put it mildly. In less than a year, Goldman Sachs has ordered 3 rounds of layoffs. Last year, some positions were eliminated. In January this year, more than 3,000 people were laid off, and now managing directors are facing the axe. Then we have advisory firm KPMG. It's on the same boat. KPMG has seen, or rather is seeing, its second round of layoffs. More than 1,900 people are being let go of in the US offices. 4 months back, they laid off some 700 employees. Third on the list is brokerage firm Robinhood. They too are slashing jobs. 7% of their full-time staff is set to leave, 7%. What about India? How are Indian companies faring? Well, not spectacularly, I'm afraid. They too have been hit by this layoff wave. Indian companies are slashing jobs just like the rest of the world, and the IT sector is the worst affected. So far in this financial year, almost 5,000 people have lost their jobs. More than half of these jobs were based in Bengaluru. It's the IT hub of India, and Bengaluru has seen a sharp dip in hiring too. In fact, this month, there was a 7% dip in hiring. So basically, companies are hiring fewer people and firing many. And by all indications, this trend is here to stay for a while. So companies are also moving into smaller offices. They're leaving bigger spaces. And the result is this: a record number of offices are now empty. In the US, office vacancies have touched the 20% mark, meaning 1 in 5 offices is vacant. In cities like San Francisco, Dallas, and Houston, vacancy rates are as high as 25%. In London, about 14% of the city's floor space is empty, 14%. In Hong Kong, about 13 million square feet of office space is vacant. These numbers could get bigger. More companies want to shrink their office spaces. Earlier this month, a global survey came out. 347 top companies were part of the survey. Half of them want smaller offices now. 2 reasons why. Number 1, fewer employees are coming to office. Many are still working from home. And number 2, companies have a reduced headcount. Many people have been fired. So they don't really need big offices. Now this has led to a new problem: bank defaults. Landlords are unable to pay their debts. Defaults in commercial real estate is on the rise. Leading property giants have defaulted, like RXR, Columbia Property Trust, and Brookfield Asset Management. And what's the value of their debt? Well, I don't have a number, but experts say it runs into billions of dollars. One of the developers I mentioned is RXR. Earlier this year, its chief executive spoke out. He said they're unable to lease some of their properties, so they're resorting to some extreme measures. In fact, let me quote from what the CEO said back in the month of February. With some of those, I don't think there's anything we can do with them. Give the keys back to the bank, and you've got to be disciplined about it. And that's what they did. Handed the property over to the bank. Last month, they gave up a 33-story office building in Manhattan. The loan on this property was worth $240 million. So RXR decided to default. And this points to a larger trend. The global economy is in a slump. Now, we've seen a slowdown before, but this one's different. It comes after a life-altering pandemic. It may change our jobs and our offices irreversibly. Our next story is related to Pakistan. India has summoned a top Pakistani diplomat. The issue at hand is the safety of the Sikh community. It has demanded an investigation into the attacks on them. India has demanded the investigation. It has also sought the investigation report from Pakistan. Because the trend in Pakistan is alarming. In the last 3 months, 5 Sikhs have been killed. There have been 4 attacks in 90 days. I'll quickly walk you through the details, starting with the latest attack. Last week, gunmen shot and killed a Sikh man. The attack took place in Peshawar. The police called it a targeted killing. Later, the Islamic State took responsibility for it. Last month, assailants shot down another Sikh man. This attack took place in Lahore. In the month of May, gunmen killed 2 members of the Sikh community, and in April, 1 Sikh man was killed. Both these attacks were also in Peshawar. So this seems to have become a monthly affair in Pakistan, the killing of Sikhs. What is their government doing to stop this? Well, nothing that we know of. So New Delhi has decided to act. It has summoned a senior Pakistani diplomat today. It happened today, and India lodged a strong protest over the attacks. It has asked Pakistan to ensure the safety of minorities. Not the first time, though. Such requests have been made in the past too, and they've fallen on deaf ears. Minorities continue to be targeted in Pakistan. First, it was the Hindus. They were forcefully converted, discriminated against, and killed. And now it is the Sikhs. They are one of the smallest minority groups in Pakistan. Most of them came from Pashtun and Sindhi areas. Earlier, they lived in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, but later they moved to cities like Peshawar, Lahore, and Nankana Sahib. They are worried about their safety, which is tragic because Sikhism has such a rich history in Pakistan. Nankana Sahib is the birthplace of Guru Nanak. It is located in Pakistan's Punjab. Kartarpur Sahib is another holy site for Sikhs. It is also located in Punjab. In the 19th century, the Sikh community was a major political force here. This was before India's partition. In 1947, there were around 2 million Sikhs in what became Pakistan. During partition, many left for India, but a sizable population remained. Over the years, those numbers have dwindled, though. Today, there are not more than 12 to 15,000 Sikhs left in Pakistan. Most of them live in Peshawar. The 2017 Pakistan census tells their story. Their numbers are so small, they don't even make up a separate category. They've been bundled with others. That's how small the Sikh population is, and yet their persecution continues. Intolerance is growing and attacks have become a regular affair. The rise of the Taliban further fueled this violence. There were targeted killings, even cases of arson in Sikh neighborhoods. On top of that, there are forced conversions and incidents of lynching. In fact, religious minorities in Pakistan are already marginalized across the board. There is social exclusion, daily harassment, and lack of opportunities. Add violence to that, and it makes it the perfect brew for religious persecution. But you won't hear that from Barack Obama or the American press, because they like talking only about India, it seems. Meanwhile, Pakistan's top leadership is camping in Dubai, far removed from this religious persecution and economic crisis and all other issues that besiege their country. They're in Dubai to secure their own political future and to end Imran Khan's career. The plan apparently is to bring Nawaz Sharif back to Pakistan. It's quite a story. On Monday, the ruling coalition of Pakistan held a meeting in Dubai. This meeting included the PMLN, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. It is the ruling party. It is the party of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. And its coalition partner is the PPP, the Pakistan People's Party. Together, they came to power in 2022. This was after Imran Khan was ousted. And they've been in office for a year now. They face an election soon. Reports say PMLN Supremo Nawaz Sharif was also present in the meeting in Dubai. He's the older brother of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. And he met with Asif Ali Zardari, the leader of the Pakistan People's Party, the coalition partner. And this is quite significant. Remember, Nawaz Sharif has been Prime Minister of Pakistan thrice. In 2017, he was disqualified for life. And since 2019, he has been in self-imposed exile in London. When Imran Khan was Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif could not enter Pakistan. He did not enter Pakistan. He would have been arrested. But his fortunes changed in 2022. That's when his brother, Shehbaz Sharif, became Prime Minister. And since then, Nawaz Sharif has been trying to return to his country. His brother and his party are working to ensure that. In fact, they've recently brought about a new law. It was passed on Sunday. This law limits the lifetime disqualification of any lawmaker. So now in Pakistan, any leader can be disqualified, but for not more than 5 years. After 5 years, the disqualification ends. And it works for Nawaz Sharif. He can now return to Pakistan. He can also contest an election. The current parliament, or the National Assembly as they call it, will complete its term on the 12th of August this year. After that, elections must be held in the next 60 days. That's what the Constitution says. If they follow the Constitution, they will have to hold an election later this year. So the top leadership is in a huddle. They have to announce elections soon. They have to devise their strategy and figure out a power-sharing deal in case they win. In a conversation like this, Nawaz Sharif's participation is telling because the upcoming election is crucial. Pakistan is suffering a crippling economic crisis and political chaos. Imran Khan remains a popular leader and he has challenged the mighty army of Pakistan. So what happens in the upcoming election could well decide the course of the country. Which also brings us to what's happening in the army. On Monday, they fired 3 top commanders. 15 other officers were also disciplined. This was over the arrest of Imran Khan. And this is very rare in Pakistan. They did not name the officers. They just blamed them for failing to protect army properties. It is the strongest action that the army has publicly taken against its own officers in decades. So the message was quite clear. No support for Imran Khan will be tolerated. He was once the selected prime minister, but now he is enemy number 1, and he wants to return to power. So this election is going to be very, very critical. On one side is a 3-time former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif eyeing his return to power. On the other side is the army. For decades, they've had a firm grip on how Pakistan is run, but Imran Khan has challenged that. So going into the polls, these two sides, the Sharifs and the army, may have very different aims, very different ambitions, but they have a common objective: to keep Imran Khan out of power. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Thousands marched in North Korea's anti-US rally to mark the anniversary of the Korean War. A massive blaze engulfed a residential tower in the United Arab Emirates. A Japanese university has designed wearable robotic arms to explore the idea of a multi-limbed cyborg society. And finally, going back in history, on the 27th of June 2008, India's former army chief Sam Manekshaw died. He's considered one of the country's greatest war heroes. He played a crucial role during India's victory over Pakistan in 1971 in the creation of Bangladesh. We're leaving you with these images. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
영조선의 역사와 전통을 빛나게 이어나간다는 시위 참가자들은 영적인 포를 터치며 행진해 나갔습니다. 최악의 총본살인 미국이라는 땅.
モードみたいなのができない。こんな感じ。